Yes, ma'am. Let's get it rocking and rolling. Thank you
All right.
for being here.
So, Catherine, while I do this, will you let people in?
Oh, yes, I could do that.
All right. So, welcome everyone to the Friday Postcard Power Writing. Today we have an incredible program. We've got our spotlight group of Postcards and Politics in Springfield, led by Kelly and Christine, and they'll be talking to us in a little bit about what they've done in Springfield, working with postcard writers, young and old, and turning them from power postcard writers to power volunteers in every way. Then part of their group is Dave Nanney, and he is also a docent at the 9/11 Memorial at the Pentagon, and he's going to lead us in a 9/11 tribute. Hello, Dave, he's there. Then we have Representative Gerry Connolly, who is it will be talking about the post office and answering our post office questions. But before we get started, I have some big news for postcarders. You've probably noticed that we were completely out of addresses, completely. And how many addresses was that, you might want to know, that we managed to go through? We managed to go through 367,000 addresses. That is just astronomical, but there's more. We have a stash of addresses that are very special addresses. They're addresses for voters who did not put a phone number on their voter ID card, which means nobody can contact them by phone or texting. We've all been contacted by the campaigns, come phone bank for us or text for us, but there's actually a lot of voters who don't give their phone number and don't want to be texted. So we have about 67,000 addresses of those. And this morning, we released those addresses. They're for all 11 congressional districts. It's part of the Vote Early Win campaign. And we want people to vote early so that we make sure that they can vote safely. And people in Virginia are very lucky because we can vote early 3 different ways. We can vote early by going to our county registrar's office and voting early in person. No, you don't need an excuse. And it's just like voting on election day. You just go there and vote. There's nothing different. That's what it looks like. You can also vote by mail. And if you want to vote by mail, you can go ahead and request your absentee ballot now. And the minute you get that absentee ballot, you need to finish it, you need to complete it and mail it right back in. We also, thanks to our legislature, will have drop boxes around the state at the registrar's office. And of course, you can vote on election day, November 3rd. And we're encouraging people to work the polls so that we'll have more than enough people for that. So we invite you to write our Vote Early Win postcards. To get those, we're not going to mail them on the same day as all the other postcards. We're going to mail these a week later. But if you have some volunteers who still want to write and they're complaining that there are no addresses, as of today, there are addresses. And when you leave this Zoom session, there will be an email waiting for you, telling you all about the campaign. So with that, I'm going to stop, and we are going to do our first door prize, because here at Postcards and Network NoVA, we don't just do things normally.
Yeah.
We
like to have fun, and
like to have fun.
What's in Stair's little bag of goodies before we spin? What do you think?
Oh, okay, sure, Stair. Why don't you tell us what we're spinning for?
Yeah,
we're spinning for T-shirts.
Ooh,
but I leave it as a surprise.
I got my
Okay.
T-shirt on.
All right, so we're spinning for a T-shirt.
Okay, so,
okay.
And I've got my T-shirt on.
All right, so can everybody see the spinner?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Spinning for the first one.
Put a woman in charge. Should I sing? Can I do the spinner sound? Spinners. All right, who do we got?
Okay, so it's Linda Mills. Is Linda Mills here?
Linda, speak up.
You have to be here to win. No? Okay, we're doing it again.
Okay. That's
Come
the
on.
Yeah, I think we do need music if we're going to have a lot of spins.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how many spins we have to go. Peggy Pridemore, I know she's
I
here.
know she's here too. Oh, she's
the winner.
What?
Hey, Peggy.
All right, let me.
Is your house like my house? My husband said to me, not one more t-shirt. If you
Well, I do have a big rag jar too.
I told him I'm going to
Okay.
make a big blanket out of all the t-shirts when this election's over and wrap us up in it.
All right, well, let's get started.
Wait a
I
minute. Don't I get to reach into my bag and show the prize that she gets?
I'm sorry. Of course you do, Stair.
Of course she does.
Okay, all right. Another thing I'd like to say is that if people will mute themselves unless they are talking, then they don't just sort of randomly pop up on the screen. So this is Peggy Pridemore. I think she needs one of these.
What do you got for Peggy? Let's look. Oh gosh, yes. Oh, wait.
How's it looking for me? I know I
Not
got
really
my back.
good. We can't
Not
see
really-
it, but back away. It's the badass woman get things done. There you go. Perfect, Stare.
Okay, I've got them in different sizes, Peggy. You just let me know what size you want, okay?
Oh, I love that. And
Okay.
I do not have that one.
Right,
All
that's right.
right.
I think I just put your one that Catherine has on in the mail. So you'll be getting that shortly. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. All right.
Okay, with that, I want to introduce the Postcard and Politics group. They're been a powerhouse since the beginning, and we have three of the representatives, but Kelly and Christine are going to talk about it before we move on to Dave, who's going to give us the tribute. So Kelly, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you guys so much for having us. We're really excited to be here today. Christine and I organized Postcards and Politics of Springfield together. I see, of course, Dave's here, Linda's here, and I noticed Don, who is fresh off his win of Member of the Year for Springfield Dems last night. He is also here, so thank you guys for showing up and supporting our group. And if I missed anyone, I'm sorry. I was trying to scroll through all the pages. There's 78 people. It's so exciting. In Springfield, we took over last year when Erica Reynolds Clayton, who was the leader of our little postcard group in Lee District, she moved to Germany, and Christine and I said we would take it over, and our goal was to write 10,000 postcards for Kathy Tran, and we beat that goal. We wrote 12,000. We wrote for other candidates. And our mission statement at Postcards and Politics is to turn anger into action, one postcard at a time. And we also really want to focus on turning our activists into, our postcard writers into activists. We really want them to get engaged in the process, so we try to break down all barriers to volunteering. So when we were meeting in person pre-pandemic times, we would meet at my house and I would cook dinner, and that way people coming straight from work could just eat and write and have their hour to, be an activist. Those with children, we opened up the basement and allowed them to bring their kids so that they don't ever have to worry about the safety of their children. We also tried to do things where we want to extend our activism beyond postcards and really focus on phone banking and text banking and door knocking. So we really tried to get other people involved who maybe say don't like door knocking to drive the people who do like to knock on doors, and just kind of really just get everyone involved, become a real community and a real family of support for each other, and just try to reach out and, engage our local people with our politicians. I actually talked to Don this morning. I did a little interview for him, and we were just talking about how when you have that connection with a politician and you find that issue that you connect with, it's so much easier to become engaged in the political process and see how it affects you. So yeah, we're just really excited. I think Christine can talk more about it, but I think we are on target this year to write either somewhere in the ballpark of 15 to 20,000 cards that we will mail out next week. Those will be going mostly to Virginia, but we also did some swing states. We did North Carolina and Alaska. We did some Moms Rising postcards. I'm trying to think of where else we've gotten them from, but we've just been really focused on this year doing to-go packets for contactless pickup and fundraising with our shirts that we made last year, and having our yard sale, and just, you know, really trying to get people engaged beyond just our little community. So that's kind of where we are this year.
Christine, do you want to add anything?
Well, we usually let Kelly do the talking because she's so much better at it. I just like to sit in a back room and count postcards and money. So she always does a great job explaining our mission, and I think she nailed it. I'm hoping, yeah, I think we've got 15,000 postcards, which is a lot for us. We are generally just the West Springfield area. But I think we're going to be surprised once we've actually counted them all. So,
Kelly, can you
and
say?
I just have to give a shout out to the Alexandria group. They recently gave us a stamp donation from some of their leftover stamps. So that is going to be huge. Now Kelly and I will not have to sell our plasma. So, but she would make us. She is like a fundraiser. So, and then we saw your t-shirt raffle and we thought we should give away one of our t-shirts.
Wait, do you want to have your t-shirt be the next door prize today?
Yeah, if you don't mind, but,
Well, then, you
there's
know,
kind of a caveat. Tell them the bad part, Kelly.
Well, we've sold out of most of them, so we really only have mediums and larges, but we can definitely supply one.
All right, well then hold on. We're gonna do a spin right now for you ladies.
Oh, good.
All right, so here we go. Can everyone see the spinner?
Yep. Let's.
All right, here we go. We're spinning.
And I think these are unisex, medium and large, right?
Yes, they are. They are not female.
Not like women's medium. Yeah.
Oh,
All
that's.
right,
Oh, Christine. Yeah, we know Christine.
wait, is Christine here? You got to be here to win. I don't think she's here.
Oh, no. I called her.
Oh wait! Oh my God! She just came in.
Oh,
Is
boy.
that fair?
She deserves
She's a
it.
winner. She just
Yeah.
made it
Just
just
came in.
time.
All right. So please tell Christine that she won. All right.
All right.
So with that, I want to thank you, ladies, so much for giving the introduction, and I'm going to turn it over to Catherine because our special guest just arrived, and we're going to flip the agenda a little bit, and
Yeah.
I'm going to flip it over to Catherine. Catherine?
I love, yeah, let's flip that agenda. We like to flip a lot of things, don't we? Flip them blue. And today, like Robin said, we have a great speaker here, David from the Springfield group, and he's going to be here to talk about his job at being a 9/11 docent, and we can't wait for that. So we're going to move that after our special guest, which is my congressman who's here today, Gerry Connolly. And I'm so excited to welcome Gerry here. Where are you at, Gerry? Do you turn yourself on, your video on, so I know you're here? I saw you came in the room.
I'm surrounded by postcards that have been written, several postcard writing groups that my wife is involved in.
You know how to bring it. You are getting good at this, Gerry. I love it. And you know what I want to say to you before you start, because you have a big audience here. This is a big, people are excited to hear from you. I'm curious, you seem to be really, from the very, very start, one of the few that was on top of the post office. I recognize that not only as your constituent, but I'm following the news, but you really were on this right away. And did you see it coming ahead, though, that it would get to this point where we would see a dismantlement of the actual agency? So just a little bit of insight on you, what you're doing, the post office, because like I said, you really were on it. So thank you for being here. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your activity. You're making a difference. I believe we're going to win this election, and it's going to be led by women. It really is. So thank you. And I've been saying that since the Women's March, the week of you-know-who's inauguration, because the energy that unleashed has not stopped. It's only grown, and it's burrowed in. If you look at early votes or applications for early voting all around the country, except for Georgia, Democrats are swamping the numbers. I mean, we're just killing the Republicans in terms of early vote. And a number of our early votes, by the way, are people who did not vote in previous elections. So we're not only guaranteeing an early vote and banking that, we're getting people who didn't bother to vote in 2016 who are asking to vote this year. And especially in key states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, that is true. And so that's a very positive sign. And part of it is because we are doing the nitty gritty in a pandemic of calling and postcard writing and letter writing and everything else, Zooming and emailing friends, neighbors, strangers to get them to vote. And if you think that doesn't make a difference, let me tell you, it does. Catherine mentioned the Postal Service, and let me just talk a little bit. I thank you, Catherine, for noting the fact that I was a very early sort of Cassandra about the Postal Service. I was warning my fellow Democrats in our caucus back in the very early stages in February and March of the pandemic that, hey, if we're going to count on the Postal Service to handle massive numbers of voting, you better pay attention to what's going on in the Postal Service and to the declining revenue and lots of other fiscal problems it's facing. And to say nothing of the fact that, the Postal Service has 630,000 employees, 65,000 of whom came down with COVID or had to be quarantined because of it. Tragically, several dozen have died. And that means we've got labor shortages all over the place. And then, of course, when Louis DeJoy became the new Postmaster General, a political crony of the president, big Republican donor who may very well have violated election law to make those donations, he clearly came in with an agenda to help Trump disrupt voting by mail and to get it in their heads it's not reliable or safe to vote by mail, which is false. And he set about right away. He dismantled, we now know, over 700 sorting machines, voting sorting machines. Each one of those sorting machines can handle 32,000 pieces of mail an hour. That means that each one of them handles hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail a day times 700. That's not trivial. He eliminated overtime, which we know with the labor shortage because of the pandemic is necessary to continue the flow of mail. Now, the good news is we were able to sort of put a lot of spotlight and sunshine on what he was doing. So they weren't doing it in the dark and they get caught at it. And the public reaction was overwhelming. And I think that's worth examining too. Why is that true? So we're in the middle of a pandemic. We go to work normally. We don't have daycare. We can't send our kids to school. We can't go to a restaurant. We can't go to a sports event. We're worried about illness. We're worried about dying. We're worried about our aging parents. We're worried about our loved ones in nursing homes. But the one thing we take for granted every day, it happens every day at the same time, the mail arrives. That, for some reason, ought not to be affected by the pandemic, even though, of course, it is. But the truth of the matter is the mail has been delivered. During shutdown, during quarantine, during everything that's going on, the mail shows up every day at roughly the same time every day by our postman or postwoman. So when the public learned that actually might be disrupted, and not because of the pandemic and not because of the economy, but because Trump and DeJoy are pursuing a partisan political agenda to disrupt voting by mail because they believe it will help Democrats. The public was outraged. And you saw, for the first time ever, the post office became a headline issue. I mean, I never thought I'd see that, but every cable news show, its lead headline was the Postal Service. Every newspaper in America had headline stories, front page stories about the Postal Service. And the public reaction was so strong. I mean, we actually had protests all over the country in front of post offices about the changes. Now, that's a first too. No one's ever protested a post office. We've protested draft offices and immigration offices and banks and lots of other things, but we've never protested the post office. But we did this time in solidarity with postal workers and in demanding that no interruption should occur in the delivery of mail. The narrative that the Republicans like to purport that, hey, this huge volume of new voters voting by mail cannot be handled by the Postal Service is false. They're trying to make it true, but if you think about holiday rush, right? So around Christmas time and Hanukkah, the volume is enormous, huge surge. Packages, Christmas cards, holiday cards, whatever, several hundred million extra volume. And it's handled routinely. They're set up for that. They are set up for surges. So the idea that 100 million votes might be cast or so by mail will swamp the Postal Service is false. They are set up for that. They can do it. Excuse me. There's nothing about the current Postal Service that would suggest otherwise. Now, what we want to encourage people to do is, if you vote by mail, do it early. Do not wait till the last minute.
You're speaking our language. Go with it.
Yep. And if for any reason you can't do it that early, then vote at a satellite office or take that ballot after you've signed the envelope and drop it off at a election drop-off box or in person. Here in Virginia, in Fairfax anyhow, we're going to have deputy electoral officials at all of the satellite voting places, and they are authorized to accept your mail-in ballot that you didn't mail. So if you get a mail-in ballot and you decide, I think I'm going to drop it off at the satellite voting place, you can do so. And so that's what we want to encourage everyone to do. And the demand for that is quite high. Most people want to be able to vote remotely or absentee by mail primarily. We know 76% of the American people support that. 70% would like that option, and 50 to 60% of the voting population say, I intend to exercise that option.
Right.
So we got to be set up for that. In Fairfax, I think we are. I just to give you a little data, and then I'll shut up, Catherine.
No, I don't want you to shut up. I want to ask you, I want the data, but I think people will want to ask you questions.
Yeah.
So when you're ready, we'll open that up, but that's all I want to say.
So I just want to end by giving you scope of what's going on mailing, voting by mail. So a year ago, when we had a Democratic primary in all of Fairfax County, I think something like 1,300 people voted by mail. In the primary we had in June 23rd, just in my part of Fairfax, almost 33,000 people voted by mail. So we had a 30-fold increase. And so far in Fairfax, I believe 140,000 people have requested an absentee ballot by mail. And that's, as of today, the 11th of September, we don't even cast ballots until the 18th. So I think you're going to see several 100,000 requests for early ballots by mail in Fairfax County alone. So that just gives you the idea of the scope. I think in our last big election, we had 78,000 people cast ballots that way. So it's going to be many times bigger than we've ever experienced before, even with some people being reluctant to cast it. I can tell you that, it makes a difference. And I'll end on this. We've got to remind everybody that you can't just look at day of results, not only here, but around the country, because they're going to be very different. So when I had my primary on June 23rd, for example, those people that showed up on the day of voted 70% 30% for me. But more than half of the ballots cast were cast early by mail. And those ballots went 85-15 for me.
Wow.
Big difference, a 15-point difference. So the end result was I won 78%, not 70%. So that's going to happen around the country because we're going to win the early vote, but that's not going to be counted everywhere until much later.
Right.
And so we got to remind everybody, you know, stay calm, be patient. Let's make sure that we don't call a state until all of the votes have been, in fact, counted.
Right. No, I totally. And I think hopefully you're ready for that. And maybe federal troops will need to be ready. I'm worried about what he may have up his sleeve. But anybody, we have about 80 or 90 people here today. Maybe there's take a question or two, and then we're going to, Gerry, I want you to know that we have a special guest here. David, is it Nanney is here. He's a 9/11 docent, and he's going to give us a tribute today on 9/11. So you're welcome to hang in for that. But is there any questions? Robin, can you see any in the chat?
I'll jump up in here and ask you a question.
Sure.
This is Stair Calhoun. Hi. When do you and Smitty plan to vote?
We're debating that. So in the primary, I voted by mail, and I did a little video to show everybody how you fill out your application, and it wasn't that hard and all that good stuff. It's actually easier to apply and to fill out your ballot this time than it was in June because state law changed. So you don't need a witness, you don't need an excuse, and all that good stuff. But we're thinking about this time maybe highlighting the satellite voting. So we're thinking of maybe going to a satellite so we don't wait till November 3rd and we show people how easy it is to vote at one of these. I think Fairfax has 14 satellite places. You know, it's not hard. There aren't lines. Get it done. Do it early. So we're debating, do I do it by mail again or do I do it then? My daughter has just re-registered in Fairfax. She's moving from the city back home. And so she's going to be able to vote in Virginia again.
Nice.
And so we thought maybe as a family we might do that. I don't know. So it's one of those two, but we're certainly not going to vote on November 3rd.
Well, Stair, you have a motive behind that. We have a voter challenge we're doing. And so what we're going to do is we'll circle back with you.
Yeah.
The grassroots has started a voter challenge we'll talk about later, but taking a picture of yourself, a video of yourself voting early, Gerry, making some hashtags and helping us build this movement. A few questions that I'll read to you. And I think we know the answer to when do we expect to have drop boxes out for use in Fairfax, and that would be October 14th or earlier, right? It will be.
That's right. That's what I'm saying as well, yeah.
And they want to know, do we count votes as they're received or do we wait to start counting on election day in Virginia?
So what Virginia, again, liberalized the law. So our electoral board is allowed, as ballots come in, to process them, but not count them. So they get everything ready in a stack to go through the machine to be counted, but they have to count those on election day, not before.
Not before.
But that's a huge improvement because that saves an enormous amount of time.
Right.
There are states that say you can't even touch that until election day, and some states even say you can't touch it until the polls are closed.
Right.
Which guarantees, given the volume we're talking about, we're not going to know the results for days, maybe even a week or two in some of those states. But because of the changes in Virginia law,
right,
we're ready to go, and I would expect it to be a fairly, time-consuming but efficient process.
Right. So I'm going to
throw in.
I'm going to rapid fire.
Wait. I've got one. Let's go to a question that's more talking about nationally. One, Peggy Pridemore asks, what can Congress do to replace the sorting machines that the post office has removed?
We don't need to replace them. We need to reconnect them.
Reconnect.
And we're doing everything we can. I mean, technically, Congress can't, Congress created into the Postal Reorganization Act a separate board of governors. It made the post office a quasi-governmental entity rather than a part of the cabinet. And by the way, the whole purpose was to depoliticize the post office, ironically. So, so we're putting all the heat we can on that issue, as well as overtime, as well as restoring, mail drop boxes and so forth. And that's going to be a slog. We're going to be fighting it all the way. And my guess is, sadly, that's going to be a piecemeal success effort. So maybe we succeed in Philadelphia and Boston. Maybe we don't succeed in Detroit. I mean, we just don't know. But we're doing everything we can. We've got an actual number. We know the number of sorting machines. And we're working with postal managers, postal unions, postal workers, as well as public sentiment to keep the heat on to get those things reconnected.
Well, you'll be happy to know I saw my mailman the other day. He comes out of Merrifield, right by us here, and he was telling me how bad it is. He's never seen it this bad in 20 years, nothing like it. And he turned to me and said, "You need to vote." And he doesn't know what I do, and I was like, "Yeah." So we thank you for being here, and I know that there's some questions about voting in here that I think our group can answer pretty well. One thing takeaway is that I'm wondering also, it seems like there's like death by many cuts with this voter suppression. The Republicans have put people, Kanye West, on a ballot here. They have lawsuits going on. I don't think we've ever seen this level of voter suppression out loud and at every level. And I think that's their goal, is to see how many places they can just stop voting.
Where Republicans take over consistently, they engage in overt and covert voter suppression methods.
Yeah.
And if you look at the difference, in terms of, our group here right now, have we made a difference? Well, look at the General Assembly. They overturned voter suppression methods, en masse. They made it easier to vote in Virginia. They expanded early voting.
Right.
They took away the restrictions that have been longstanding in terms of if you want to vote early, you better have an excuse. And for a lot of seniors, especially, and other people, I mean, that actually weighed in their minds. They wouldn't vote early if they didn't think they had a valid excuse. Now they don't need one.
Right.
And so we've been moving real aggressively here in Virginia to overturn those measures. But in many states, if you look at the 3 blue states we lost 4 years ago, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, what did they have in common? Republican takeover. They had Republican governors and Republican state legislatures, and all of them moved aggressively at voter suppression, the biggest of which was purging voting rolls.
Yes.
In 2012,
12,
Barack Obama won re-election by a margin of roughly 4 million votes. Guess how many votes by 2016 the Republicans have purged nationwide? 4 million.
Wow.
And it's even more now. So you're absolutely right, Catherine. We've got to call it out for what it is, and we've got to fight it every step of the way.
Well, thank you, Gerry, and thank your wife for writing. I know that all those postcards in front of you is so awesome. So we're going to move on with the program, but we will be in touch, and we'll be back in touch about that voter challenge.
Yep, and thank you for remembering 9/11. It's a sacred day, and it is a day for coming together, not being driven apart.
Yes, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, Robin.
So I am now going to spotlight
Let's get on.
Dave Nanney, and we are going to begin our 9/11 tribute. So Dave, you got the floor.
All righty, and thank you. And Congressman, thank you for everything you're doing. Keep fighting the fight. We need that. So I'm Dave Nanney. I worked at the Pentagon for 42 years. I'm a docent at the Pentagon Memorial. Unfortunately, it closed last year because it had some electrical problems. So I actually haven't delivered a docent presentation in almost a year. So you're going to hear Rust. Robin, Catherine, and all of you, thank you for being here. It's an important day. And we will just start by saying the reason we're here is that we will never forget. I want you to know I'm a proud member of the Springfield Postcards and Politics. Been doing it for 3 years. The first year we flipped the House. The second year we flipped Virginia. And this year, damn it, we're going to flip the White House and the Senate. And let's just get that out before I get it. Now, a warning to everybody, I carry my emotion on me. You will hear me choke. I care. So accept it. I did. It is who I am and it is what I am and I'm proud of it. Let's see. I want to introduce Charlene Ryan. She's on here. Charlene and I were talking on 9/11 at the moment the plane hit. Her organization provided desktops to the Army staff. My organization had the real computers, the big ones. We provided network services. So without us, they just had a box on the desk. Without them, we had wires that sparked. But together, the Army staff and the Secretariat was able to do what they're supposed to do in the Pentagon. So that's what brought me out of the basement on the other side of the Pentagon up to where my customers were on the side where the plane came in. There's nowhere else in the world I would have rather been. I'm glad I was on the side and not where the plane came in. I'm officially called a Pentagon survivor because I was in the area affected by the blast. But one of the docents crawled out of the blast area with a lady on his back and saved her life, all the while shouting, "Follow me to the light," and people followed his voice. And so he's a survivor. I consider myself an observer and just proud to be there. I'll take a moment. Last night I went over to the Pentagon. They have a tower of light there. Fabulous. If you have time this evening, it goes away tomorrow. You should go over. There is a parking lot right next to the lights. It's worth the time. Anyway, the other thing, normally at noon today, I will have already gone to the memorial in the morning, and at noon, I host a memorial for Commander Bill Donovan. He played soccer with me. I ran the Pentagon soccer team for years. And at this time, we'd be standing on the field and we'd be talking about Bill, and then we play a game in his honor. This year, there's no soccer, and I've rusted out. There's no Pentagon memorial, so being here is my outlook, and I can only say thank you to you all. A lot of you may not know, Pentagon was actually 60 years old on September 11th, 2001. Groundbreaking in 1941 was on September 11th. We were going to war. We knew in 42, well, we knew war was coming. They figured the military needed to talk to itself, and so they were building the Pentagon. It was built, and the first occupants were 15 months after it started. It would take 15 months to get permits if you could do that. It was completed in 18 months, which is insane. So the building was 60 years old. What that meant, my office was on the other side of the Pentagon. They put big computers in the basement because they were heavy. We would have blocks of concrete fall through the ceiling sometimes, which you can imagine is a little disturbing. The building had asbestos, it had mold, the building was falling apart. And so they had to renovate it. And the reason that's critical, we'll get to when we're talking. But you hear about the Pentagon renovation, you know the Pentagon was 60 years old. So let's talk for just a minute on the day. I'm not going to go over the details of 9/11 too much. We all know them. American Airlines Flight 77 took off from Dulles at 8:20 in the morning, made it just about to the West Virginia-Ohio border when obviously the terrorists took control and turned back towards the Pentagon. At 9:37 in the morning, the plane came into the Pentagon, about 550 miles an hour. You've seen that blurry picture of the camera showing this streak. And, you know, that's where the conspiracy guys go nuts. Well, very few cameras are going to take a side view of something at 550 miles an hour. struck the plane, struck the building. It bounced outside the building first and came into the building, high first floor, low second floor. It started to break up as soon as it hit the ground. As it hit the wall, it broke up more. As it penetrated and went through the supports, it shredded and started mixing with jet fuel. And it came to rest after the third ring of the Pentagon and then exploded. So the explosion then came from inside out. You've seen that famous picture of the Pentagon collapsing. That was 30 minutes later. And why is that? It's because of the renovation. What's the magic number at the Pentagon, right? 5 sides, 5 floors, 5 rings. If you know there's a big area in the middle, guess how many acres? Number's 5. That's a test question. Kids love to get that question if they can figure it out. But wedge 1 was the side where the plane hit. The luck of the draw. And this is the one part of this whole thing. I don't know who directed the plane to come in there, but that was the only side of the building that had been restored. The walls were reinforced, the columns were reinforced, all the asbestos removed. The furniture was all fire resistant. That's the only part of the Pentagon that had sprinklers. It had fire doors. They hadn't taught us how to use the fire doors yet. That is an issue. But they had fire doors. And so the plane hit the only part of the building that could resist. The windows are 3-inch thick, blast resistant windows. First time I gave this talk, I said blast proof. Somebody explained it, didn't stop the airplane. So let's just, blast resistant works. Good and bad. When the plane exploded from inside, those windows held the concussion inside the building. The only outlet was the hole that the plane had produced. As a result, we took 125 casualties in the building. And it was pretty much an all or none. If you were in that area, you had a bad day. There were only 109 injuries compared to 23 to 26,000 people there every single day. The fact that it was only 125 is astounding. Now, for each of them, it's a lifetime hole. Those families are suffering today, and they're suffering the loss that they should have never had. But it could have been so much worse. We believe if a plane hits anywhere else in the building, we lose thousands of people. It goes all the way through, and we lose the Pentagon in its entirety. So just start off with that miraculous thing. Now, where I was just down the hall. So as you have the Pentagon here, and the plane comes in this way, I was down at the D ring, almost to the far side. So the blast area occupied about a third in the middle, and I was out on the outside. And because I was on the outside of the corridor, talking to Charlene, my customer, we all, across the globe, the number of people who were watching TV to see the second plane come in, and I mean China, Russia, Australia, the world got notified after the first plane. We're watching the second. We threw a meeting out so we could watch it. And we're sitting there puzzling and saying, man, you would think the Pentagon might be a target. And you hear this whoop. And of course, there was nothing in my existence that could register what that was. So I'm watching the door that's 20, 25 feet from me, and I see concussion and smoke go down that hall. Some people say they saw flame. I did not. Did I suppress it? Did they project it? Charlene talked yesterday about sparkles. And then a second or two later, it was like somebody took a bucket of rubble and threw it down the hall. And you know those bobble toys? That was me. My head was just bouncing on a spring. I had no clue. Now, one of the stories in the Pentagon is they talk about voices. You heard the docent who called to people to follow him to the light. Our voice, my voice, was Sergeant Major Yarborough. In this office that I was in, he used his outside voice and just said, "Get out of here." Well, when a sergeant major uses his outside voice, you don't say, let's talk. So within moments, I went to the door. The exit was 50, 60 feet to the right because we were on the outside offices. And Charlene told me yesterday that we were some of the second or third people to go out that door. So within literally moments, I'm out of the Pentagon, used very complex logic. I looked left, saw a flame, went right. That was easy. Went up a couple hundred yards and there was a car that had been hit by plane debris. A young lady, the age of our daughter, Heather Hall, her plane had been hit and she had been nicked up. And so we're done. Both Charlene and I stopped our flight there and our focus was on her. Charlene told me she actually held her for a while till she stopped shaking. That was the first one. Okay. So nothing on 9/11 was about being afraid. I was clueless and then I was focused. When the call went out from the police saying, get out of here, another plane's coming in, I moved on down the road. Charlene and Heather got in a car and the Pentagon was behind me and we went on. So that was my experience on 9/11. You knew it was bad. I had no clue. And the more I talk about it, and the more I talk to people who were there, the more I realize I was in shock that day. I just clueless. So we'll let that go. So let's talk for a moment about the memorial, because that is what I am a docent at. So as you look at the memorial, it's about, I think, 7 acres of land, really adjacent to where the plane struck. Got 184 benches in there, each one dedicated to one of the people in the plane or the building. We decided, apparently the designers agreed that it wasn't a Pentagon issue, it was a national issue. People on the plane, people in the building, people from everywhere were involved. And so as you look at a bench, you look on the end, you will see a name. If you see that name and you look up and you see the Pentagon, they were one of the 125 people that were in the building. If you see the name and look up and you see the sky, they were one of the 59 people that were in the airplane. Can you believe a large body airplane would fly with 59 people? Today, that plane would have had mechanical trouble. The benches are aligned by age. So they have an age wall and there are plaques for each year and they're separated by their year, beginning from the youngest, who was 3-year-old Dana Falkenberg, who was flying with her family. Her mom took a job in Australia as a teacher. She was the youngest at 3. You go to the far end, John Yemeke was a retired test pilot in the Navy. He had crashed 5 times during his career and walked away. He was on the airplane. And so these are distributed by age, and it's very, very moving to do. A very simple place. They have, I think it's 40 crepe myrtles that are providing shade and beauty right now. So when you come to the memorial and you sit on a bench and you look around and just feel the air and see everything, it's a wonderful place to visit. And I just want to tell you, I've asked Kelly to pass out my information. I would love, when we're through with this virus thing, to go down there with you, your family, a group that comes in, just you, it doesn't matter, and go down and share that and just talk about it, which is something I can't really interact with you today, and it's what I love to do. Okay. Let's talk for a moment. So I'm going to move on. So I had this thing kind of in my mind in 3 parts. The last part, I was asked about, so what happened the next day and the next week and the next month? And the next day was amazing. It was 70 degrees. The sky didn't have a single cloud in it. It was very humid. Can you believe Virginia and no humidity? And we came back to the building by thousands. The building was on fire, We expected to be attacked again. And yet, by the thousands, people came back. Now, the military, they ran to the fire. They came back to the building. Of course they do that. That commercial is correct. That's what true service is about. But the average man and woman that worked there, the contractors, the government employees, men and women, young and old, came back to the building, scared to death. That's the day I wore tennis shoes. I prepared to be a leader out the back door if somebody came in the front door. But we came back to work. It's the second time. It was the proudest day of my life. And the weeks and months after, we got through the initial chaos, the initial loss. We were able to grapple with what was going on and figured out what we needed to do, because we're now at war. And for the first time in my existence, I was a critical part of that. I had been attacked. I lost comrades, and I had a mission to perform. And I have the best job in the Pentagon in the computer business, but it was a job. After 9/11, it was a mission. And you would see people and you would work with people, and there was a focus. There was no military civilian. There was no contractor. We were all aligned together. And I think if Charlene, if you ask her afterwards, it was a horrible time. Her boss, Mike Sells, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Sells, caught the plane in his lap and died. Their organization was leaderless. Just like that, they turned around and started supporting the Secretariat. And we had a purpose that was just could not be beat. And so for me, it was life-changing. I think I'm a better person because of it. I know for sure I'm a nicer person because of it, because I understand laws. So all I can say was the experiences afterwards. You talk about the worst of days, the best of days. It was an incredible period of time to work at the Pentagon. And I miss that part. There's a whole lot I don't miss. So we'll go there. So just to close up, a couple lessons. One of the things that was, to me, I get up on my pedestal and start preaching to, is the courage that we each have inside us. You watch people run to a burning car and help people, but you don't really appreciate that that's in you. But when I saw just the average government employee, just the average man and woman go back to work that day, the courage we each have, I turn around when, I guess you know, 8th graders make the field trips to DC. We get thousands of them every year. I love telling these 8th graders, I know what you've got inside you, because they're not used to hearing people say that. The second and the most important thing to me is you have to touch the people you love as often as you can, because tomorrow isn't promised. Bill Donovan, when he went to work, his wife might have said, be careful in traffic, and he was. And he's sitting at his desk doing his job, and life changed. So, you know, you tell them you love them at nighttime, and then if you wake up in the morning, darn, do it again. And that's how I live my life. And so all I can say is thank you for your attention.
Yes.
We will never forget those who were lost and their families. And finally, I write postcards.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And my heart is full. You brought tears to my eyes, David. And I'm just so thankful for you reminding us today really what unites us. So beautiful for sharing your story. And it is a never forget kind of day. So we appreciate you coming.